Take care, okay?
Feeling under the weather during work, I got a ride home. After getting out of the car and saying bye, I headed towards the front door. Opening the door, I was hit by a smell. Ugh, what's this scent? An unfamiliar sweet smell wafted through, and I noticed a pair of women's high heels. I didn't recognize neatly placed in the entrance. Wondering if someone might be visiting, I entered the house. No one was in the living room. Feeling worse both physically and emotionally, I headed upstairs to lie down. Only to overhear a conversation that made my condition plummet further. My name is Emily. 28 years old and work as a wedding planner. 4 years have passed since I started this job. I've been busy with client meetings and venue tours. I met my husband, Michael, also 28, when he visited my workplace for business. We've been married for 2 years now. Though we don't have kids yet, we recently bought a house. Thinking it might be nice to start thinking about expanding our family once we're more settled. 3 months into our new home, my job entered its busy season. One morning, my husband spoke to me as I was putting on my shoes before heading to work. Michael asked me, the weddings spike from March to May, right? Yes, though October and November are the busiest. Why do you ask?
Just wondering if you'd be too busy to take vacations for a short trip during the May holidays.
Well, I'm swamped, but a day trip should be fine.
Ah, I see. Well, let's consider a day trip then. It depends on your work schedule, though. Don't stress over it.
His insinuating tone caught my attention, but I had to leave for work. It's unlike him to suggest a trip. He's usually such a homebody. Despite Michael being the one to originally suggest a getaway. That conversation faded into the background, swallowed by the rush of our daily lives. I found myself buried under the weight of peak wedding season responsibilities. Juggling multiple ceremonies a day and stretching my work hours well into the night. This left little room for the kind of deep, meaningful conversations that used to color our evenings together. Our home had turned into little more than a quiet space for rest. Our interactions fleeting shadows in the hurried mornings and tired evenings. On weekends, I would tackle the mountain of household chores that accumulated over the week. He took care of his meals and, surprisingly, managed to leave the house cleaner than I could ever hope to. Michael, bless his heart, never left his duties untouched. His efforts were a small beacon of gratitude in our strained silence. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt for letting work take precedence over our home life. I ventured, hopeful for a shared adventure to reignite the spark between us. Michael, I can't thank you enough for all you do. Once the summer rush eases in July, maybe we could treat ourselves to a little hot spring retreat?
A trip? No need to go out of our way for that.
But I thought.
It's too late for reservations now, and I'd rather just relax at home during my days off.
He replied, his voice devoid of the enthusiasm I had hoped for. Yet, what troubled me more was Michael's growing attachment to his smartphone. Even when we spent the weekends together. He seemed that he was texting to somebody and never put his phone aside. Can we maybe put the phone down and have an actual conversation?
Huh. I'll respond if you talk to me. What's the issue?
Even when I tried to initiate conversation, Michael's responses were half-hearted. His attention never wavering from his phone. It seemed as if his digital world held more allure than our shared reality. A barrier of screens and silent messages growing between us. Despite the encroaching gloom, my dedication to my work remained unwavering. Crafting perfect moments for others' weddings was my calling, a responsibility I bore with pride. He asked me if I worked today, looking at a calendar.
Do you work today?
I'm swamped today as well. It'll be another late night. As I looked forward to a hopefully quieter month ahead, I held on to the hope of mending our strained relationship with a thorough and heartfelt discussion. I hoped that, after the busy wedding season, we could reconnect during the calm that followed. Yet, as the days blurred into nights and the calendar pages turned, the reality of my additional responsibilities, mentoring the next generation of planners, began to take its toll. My body screamed for rest, a silent testament to the relentless pace I had maintained. On that particular day, I found myself heading into the office bright and early, tasked with a meeting set up by a client who had specifically requested my expertise. However, my complexion seemed unusually pale. Not only my colleagues, but also the visiting parents of a couple planning their nuptials cared about me. Among them was David, a figure of considerable importance in my life not only because he was my husband's supervisor, but also because he had graciously played a pivotal role in our wedding, serving as a mediator. This connection had led him to entrust me with the planning of his daughter's wedding, a task I was both honored and pressured to undertake.
Emily, you are looking a bit under the weather today. Everything all right?
I'm quite all right. I'm sorry if I made you worried.
Did we overstep by asking for your help at such a busy time?
Not at all. I'm truly flattered you'd consider me for such an important role. Despite successfully navigating the meeting with David and his family, my supervisor, perhaps noting my pallor, suggested I take the rest of the day off. As I was gathering my belongings to leave, I noticed David waiting by the employee exit, his car idling nearby.
Heard you were heading out early, so I thought I'd wait and offer you a lift home.
It's very kind of you, but I feel sorry.
It's no problem at all. After all, you're looking after my daughter's big day.
Gratefully, I accepted his offer and we made our way home. Upon reaching my house, I thanked him profusely as I got out of the car.
Take good care,
he called out as he drove away. Watching his car fade into the distance, I turned towards my home, a sense of unease growing within me. The moment I opened the door, a wave of sweet perfume hit me, and there, in the foyer, lay a pair of women's high heels that were strangers to me. Could we have had a visitor? I pondered, stepping further inside with a growing curiosity. The living room offered no clues. Yet, from the second floor, the sound of my husband's voice mingled with that of another woman's drifted down to me. But there's only our bedroom and a spare room upstairs, meant for future plans. The thought struck me with a blend of confusion and intrigue. Despite the hesitation that tugged at me, I found myself compelled to ascend the stairs, drawn by the need to uncover the source of the voices. The bedroom door was firmly shut, yet the distinct sound of my husband, Michael, conversing with a woman pierced the silence of our home.
Seriously, Michael, what if Emily finds us here? We've even used the bed. We need to make sure everything's back in order.
She's tied up at work, so we're good.
He nonchalantly reassured her. It appeared he had taken advantage of my absence due to work obligations to entertain a woman in our sanctuary. I listened in, a cocktail of discomfort and illness swirling within me.
Then we can relax a bit longer.
She said she would have a meeting in fieldwork with a colleague today. She won't be back for at least another 6 hours.
Time does fly, doesn't it?
I'd love for her to come back even later. She's the type to notify if delayed, always so precise.
Isn't your wife a wedding planner?
Indeed, her clientele has been growing recently.
Amid their laughter, I mustered the courage to knock on the door, a clear signal of my presence. Detecting their sudden silence, I seized the moment to speak. Was someone mentioning my profession? The sound of hurried movements betrayed their panic. May I come in? If you're not decent, please dress. The door cracked open slightly, revealing Michael's face, his hand firmly against the door, perhaps to prevent further intrusion.
You scared me! Thought you were at work?
I felt unwell and came home early. But more pressing, who's in there with you?
What are you implying? I've been here resting alone.
Curious, I distinctly heard a woman's voice.
Perhaps it was the TV?
The entranceway is home to a pair of high heels, Michael. There's no need for secrets. I insist on an introduction.
I assure you, it's only me.
Our standoff was punctuated by a whisper from the woman.
Michael, David's outside. We can't very well escape via the balcony.
David's here?
From the garden below, David's voice rose.
Hey, isn't that Ashley? Why is she here in her underwear at this residence?
David's query loosened Michael's hold on the door. I seized the opportunity to push the door wide open, revealing my husband and the woman seated on the floor in their undergarments. Did she pop out of a television? I've never seen this actress before, but could I perhaps have her name?
This is,
It appears you two are quite acquainted with David as well. If you're not inclined to be forthcoming, maybe I should direct my inquiries to David himself.
Wait a minute.
At least put on some clothes. I can wait, I remarked, watching them huddle together, quivering in a mix of fear and cold. Descending to the first floor, I proceeded to welcome David inside, who had kindly made a detour to return something I had inadvertently left in his car. While I was apologizing for the oversight, Michael and the woman apprehensively made their way into the living room.
What exactly is happening here?
David insisted, his stare becoming more intense as he examined the pair who had just come in. It was revealed that the woman was Ashley, a 23-year-old team member under Michael, entwined in a clandestine affair that spanned the last 6 months. Their secret meetings at our home began in March when my work schedule intensified. The uncharacteristic tidiness of our home, it turned out, was her endeavor to obliterate any traces of her presence. The thought of her invading our space, her touch contaminating everything I held dear, and their use of our bed for their escapades made me feel nauseous. An affair, right in our own home.
I did feel a bit sorry about that.
You invite your mistress home and only feel a bit sorry?
The reason I strayed was your negligence, hiding behind your work as an excuse. You bear a share of the blame.
Excuse me? My commitment to my profession as a planner was well established before our marriage. Were you not aware that my schedule could become demanding? I countered, challenging his unfounded accusation.
I was aware, but a woman who places her career ahead of her home hardly seems endearing. I was merely in search of some comfort, some solace.
Then you should have married someone capable of providing that.
I hadn't considered that at the time.
That's purely selfish. My anger peaked. Just as I was about to direct my fury at him, David intervened.
Enough. The fault lies with you, Michael. And yet, you dare to cast blame onto Emily.
David's stern reprimand silenced Michael. I am proud of my career, and resigning is not within my considerations.
I've never desired for you to resign. I merely hoped for a bit more consideration towards our home.
I recognize my neglect, but I cannot prioritize you above all else. If our values diverge to such an extent, perhaps divorce is the inevitable conclusion.
Divorce? I didn't think it would come to that. Ashley and I agreed it was casual. Let's start over.
Don't be absurd. Casual, you say, as if my feelings don't matter?
Your feelings.
If you want to leave her, that's your choice. But don't expect me to come back to you.
You won't forgive me?
Why should I? Not only did you betray me, but you also brought your mistress into our home. Our sacred space. I can't live here anymore, nor can I ever forgive you for what you've done. Without another word, I began packing my bags, ready to leave behind the life we had built together.
Emily, are you all right?
I'm sorry for the trouble today. I'll come by another day to apologize properly. Don't worry about it. David reassured me, his kindness in these final moments only deepening my regret. Returning to my parents' home, I opened up about my husband's betrayal and my firm decision to pursue a divorce. My mother-in-law, on the phone, apologized profusely for her son's actions. Days later, with the help of my lawyer, I initiated the divorce process. Despite my husband's reluctance to let go, the intervention of his parents expedited the proceedings, and our divorce was finalized the following month. The settlement was substantial, around $45,000. It barely covered the alimony and the debts my husband had incurred wooing his mistress. The sale of our home, a place tainted by betrayal, left him with little after the financial settlements were made. His affair, now public knowledge within his workplace, led to both his and his mistress's dismissal. Forced to vacate the home he had so recently secured, Michael found himself without a family to return to. Instead, he started a new job, a live-in position his parents had arranged for him. Months after our divorce, I heard through the grapevine that my ex-husband had reached out, seeking reconciliation in a message filled with loneliness and regret.
My life has changed and become devastated without you. I would like to start our relationship over again.
By then, I had changed my email address, cutting off any means for him to contact me directly. His subsequent attempt to obtain my new contact information through my lawyer was met with a stern warning, ensuring his silence thereafter. Ashley, the mistress, was ordered to pay a substantial sum in damages, $25,000, which her parents begrudgingly settled. Her inability to secure stable employment following her dismissal was a consequence of her own actions, a fact she seemed unwilling to accept. At the time of payment, she blamed me.
You ruined my entire life.
Despite her attempts to blame me, any semblance of sympathy I might have harbored for her vanished. My in-laws, appalled by their son's behavior and his audacious attempt to contact me for reconciliation, considered cutting ties with him. However, they ultimately decided against it, choosing instead to keep a close watch over him to prevent any future attempts to reach out to me. They apologized once more, assuring me that they would take responsibility for ensuring I wouldn't be bothered by him again. In the aftermath, I embraced a new beginning, accepting a job offer I had been considering and continuing my work as a wedding planner. While my decision to start anew wasn't solely motivated by my divorce, moving to a new location with my parents offered a fresh start. Despite everything, I remained committed to creating joyous moments for others, crafting the happiest days for those stepping into a new chapter of their lives, just as I had embarked on my own.